Welcome to the Scaling Smart podcast, where we bring together industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and innovators to discuss key insights, strategies, and experiences that have driven success, both for themselves and their customers. I'm Billy Mitchell, your host. Today, I'm excited to introduce a special guest. We have Steve Schaffer, who's the COO of TalentThrive, which is a people-first consulting firm that helps businesses attract, retain, and develop high-performing talent through tailored recruitment solutions, leadership development programs, and data-informed workforce strategies. Steve, thanks so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Billy. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited for our conversation. As a reminder to you and our audience, we break our podcast recording and conversation down into three primary sections. First, we want to get to know you and your organization, a bit of where you started, how you got here. I love digging into the career path and life path of people. Then we want to go into who you guys serve, your ideal client profile, what industry are you guys in, what does competition look like, what does the next, let's say, 3 years look like, and then growth and scale. How are you guys growing this thing? And again, I love learning about what didn't work so that hopefully I can avoid those mistakes too, because I assure you I've made plenty of mistakes myself. Plenty that people can learn from.
No doubt.
All that to say, you excited? Get ready to jump in?
Let's do it, man. I'm ready.
Sweet. All right, Steve, let's get to know you. If you don't mind, you can take more than 90 seconds, but I like to think of it as an elevator pitch. Who are you? How'd you get to where you're at? And what's your organization?
Yeah, so I born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio. So I started out actually years ago in the financial space in a regional bank, and started at kind of the branch level, but then went into bank protection, which essentially is kind of fraud investigation, which was, I love that space. It was actually a lot of fun, but I didn't love the banking culture. It just wasn't for me, wasn't my thing. And somehow, some way, stumbled upon a great firm that just kind of had in the old days, this kind of dating myself, but was actually looking in the Sunday paper, where you actually kind of circled different jobs and said, okay, that kind of looks fun. I might want to try that. And so found a job that was kind of more of like a service manager, client services kind of manager thing, but it was in the human capital management space. And so essentially what that meant was really just kind of for a behavioral science company that was an assessment company, if you will. So if you know like DISC or Myers-Briggs, any of those kinds of predictive index, any of those kinds of assessments, that's the space they were in. And so I worked there for almost 12 years. And that's where I met Nathan Gard, who was the top salesperson there. And I ultimately got into sales there, did sales there for most of my career there for about 10 years of the 12. And Nathan and I kind of were competed with each other for those many years as 1 and 2 in the sales department. And so we developed a great friendship, and we're very competitive together and all that stuff. And so I mentioned him because he's our CEO at TalentThrive and started TalentThrive in 2018. And so when he started TalentThrive, he wanted me to join. And so in 2019 is when I left that firm that he was at for years, and I joined him in 19, and that's when we got off and running with TalentThrive.
That's incredible. I'm very familiar with the DISC and other, personality assessments. And I would say if I have a greater interest in certain parts of my business, I would say that HR, people ops, human capital, personality, matching, if you will, is definitely up there. So let's dive into TalentThrive. Obviously, you have that as your background. You join as a COO. What do you guys do? What do you do on a day-to-day basis? How are you helping people?
Yeah. So when we first started, so in 18, when Nathan opened the doors, he really started as a retained search firm. And that's really where we kind of built a lot lot of capital and really built up a great nest egg, if you will. And so we were doing that from 18 up until this lovely little thing hit in early 2020 that we're all very familiar with, COVID. And so what was interesting about that, as terrible as obviously that was, what that allowed us to do was something that we knew we wanted to do, but it was a matter of timing, which was add a software play to our business that was outside of just the search side of our business, because that's what we came from. We sold that software at our old firm. We were very good at it, and for years that we did that, we knew what was lacking in that industry. We knew where a lot of those players that I mentioned earlier, where they maybe fell short in some areas. Those are some good tools that I mentioned, but there's certain things, there's some gaps that they didn't touch on, that we knew if we could cover some of those gaps, if we could fill some of those areas that they did not hit, boy, we could kind of change the game a little bit. And so that's what we believe we did. So over COVID, we built out our own tool, built out our own IP. Everything that we built, we own. And so we're not the IT folks. We're the sales guys at the end of the day. We brought in the people that could build it, but we had the ideas, we knew the vision of what we wanted to build. We just brought in some of the folks that we knew from the past, that we had worked with, that had developed some of the same stuff. And we said, hey guys, this is what we want to do. We know how to build. We know what we want to build. We just need you to kind of program it and develop it, and off we go. So that's what we did. It took, it sounds easy, but it was 2.5 years plus to get it going. And then the real trick beyond that I won't bore you or go too nerdy with you on all the specifics, but the science of that is very important. If you don't have the validation of that tool, you go into the big organizations of the world, they're going to laugh you out of the room, right? You have to have that validation piece in place. So we had to have a third-party validation. We have the internal validation. So we got all that in place as well, which was a huge undertaking. So fast forward to about a year ago is when we really launched that software into the market. So we had been doing the search to kind of keep the lights on, so to speak, while we're building out this software and getting that done. And then about a year ago is when we really pushed out to the market and have been selling it since. And we've had a lot of success early on. Now I think some of that is because smartly we took it to some of those folks that knew us from our past and knew the product that we had sold before. We knew some of the, as I mentioned, some of the gaps that we were trying to fill, some of the things that they had even talked about in the past that, gosh, I wish this tool had this. And so we knew they needed that back then. Well, we addressed that issue with our new tool, said, hey, guess what? Remember when we talked and that tool didn't have that? Well, guess what? Ours does. And like, oh man, this is awesome. So it was a pretty easy sell. So we've started to build up a nice client base based on some of those conversations, some of those things that we knew they needed. And so while doing that, we're also trying to develop different channels of the business. So we're kind of going to market in a couple different ways. We have our B2B, but we also see an opportunity for individuals that may be struggling to have an understanding of where they fit. Maybe they are out of work currently and they're looking for that next role, and they just want to get a good snapshot of, all right, what are my strengths? What are my soft skills? What are the areas that I'm really good at, and what are the areas where I struggle, and how does that align to jobs? So when someone takes our snapshot, we call it our TalentThrive snapshot. They take that, it takes 15 minutes to complete. Within 15 minutes, you're scaled against 75 competencies and over 100 job models. So you immediately start to see what kind of positions you are a better fit for versus others, and also what are those soft skills that you are a fit for. So they can start aligning that snapshot with their resume and start attaching that to their resume and send that out to employers, potential employers, and showing them something way beyond just a resume. That's objective data from an organization like ourselves to say, hey, here's some of my great skills that I have that's beyond just a resume of me telling you what I've done. And hopefully it's going to give them a leg up.
That's incredible. I love the idea of going towards the individual. It actually opens up a lot of future development opportunities that you can start to serve them in different ways. So I'm sure that that's definitely going to be on the horizon as well. Let's talk for a moment. Let's talk about the business side, the B2B side. When you're approaching organizations, are you looking to talk with the HR directors? Are you looking to, or hiring managers? Are you looking at the COO level, department heads? Talk to me a little bit about who you're reaching out to, and then when they sign up with you or purchase the tool, the software, how are they utilizing it inside their organization on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, great question. So, it's the front end of your question, Billy, is I'm going to approach it gently because I love my HR folks, but we typically are trying to go into, obviously business owners are great. If we can get to the CEOs, business owners, C-suite, that's where we want to have those conversations. Now, ultimately, we are going to engage and really work day to day with the HR folks. That's who we are going to implement the tool with. But a lot of times the HR team or the HR leaders don't necessarily, they may not have the buying power or they may not have kind of some of the strategic vision of understanding, okay, how could this potentially impact other parts of the business? And so we often are engaging with VP of sales, business unit leaders, things of that nature to kind of have a little bit of a different conversation around, all right, what does this look like holistically versus just, okay, we're implementing a tool just to use it for a hiring piece of the puzzle. Because this tool really can be implemented across the board. It can be a snapshot of the entire organization, not just for hiring, but also for development. So the organization can use it when someone is looking for a role. They can use it for everyone internally, and not just one time, but this is something that can be, since it is a snapshot, we use that language on purpose. It is a little bit more of a snapshot of an individual. It's a snapshot of Billy right now. That means that when Billy works on something over the next year, Billy's going to change. And so some of your strengths or some of those areas where you want to grow a little bit more, if you develop those over the next year, those should start to get a little bit better. And so as you take it again, you take that TalentThrive snapshot a year from now, those competencies, we should see some incremental growth. And as we do, then we look at it again and say, okay, we're good with those. What are the next set of competencies that we maybe want to look at? What are maybe one or two other competencies that are still a bit lower that you want to focus on for the next year? And so you continue to look at those other areas, and maybe there's a different job that you're looking to get 2 years from now or next year. Let's look at the competencies under that role. And so maybe you want to get a manager role, or you're looking for that executive position over the next several years. What are some of the competencies in that role that you want to start to focus on so you can better yourself and actually get to that position? So it's something that you want to be focusing on year over year. So we're targeting a number of different folks within the organization to get in. Now, as you know, it's, there's gatekeepers, there's all those wonderful folks you got to get past to get there. So we're not always successful in that route. And so we do have conversations. If we have to have those conversations with HR, there are plenty of HR people that get it and use these tools, and they understand the value. It's just whether or not they can actually make those those decisions from a dollars and cents standpoint. Now, luckily with our tool, we've made it, that's the other piece of what we've done, is we've made it from a subscription standpoint. We've made it very cost effective to where it's not something that's going to cost them so much money, to where they should have some budget and some ability to pull the trigger on it, because it's not going to be very expensive for them to make that decision.
That's great. And I was actually wondering how your pricing model was going to be playing into that, because as a business owner myself, obviously looking at every dollar possible, but the cost to retain, or sorry, I should say, the cost to replace or hire somebody new is far more expensive than retaining and developing existing employees. Right. So it sounds to me like your tool, your as a business owner, I would utilize your tool to provide value to my employees, to develop and grow them personally, professionally, it sounds like. But simultaneously, that's providing a value to them. It's also retaining them at my organization, because that's where they're getting fed, which is great. And so it's a very circular, kind of the right hand helps the left hand, if you will. And I think that's very, very incredible.
Billy, you just nailed on, you touched on something that is a perfect example. We actually just talked to one of our clients a couple weeks ago that was giving us and we're going to get a testimonial from them so we can put it on our site, because it was perfect, that they had a conversation with one of their employees that was considering leaving. They went through the TalentThrive snapshot, looked at some of the areas where they really thought they had some pretty good growth over the last year. The manager talked to them about, okay, this is some really great scores, some great growth over the last year. Have you considered maybe moving into a different position? We have some of these positions that are going to be coming open over the next 3 months. And she was not aware of that. And she was very intrigued by those positions, but no one had talked to her about it. And they weren't posted anywhere. And so the manager brought that up. They started having those conversations. And because of that conversation, because of that engagement around that opportunity, there was then this renewed, energy and excitement about, okay, I've got another opportunity in this organization, as opposed to, I see where my ceiling is here and there's nowhere else for me to go. I'm going to start looking. And so it went from, I'm going to start looking, to I'm looking forward to staying here and getting in this next job. So yes, you're absolutely right. Awesome. It helps very much with retainment.
That's great. Yeah, I would like to have some follow-up conversations with you here next week, maybe. So let's chat about the industry and where you guys are headed. I heard of tools that do some of the things that you're talking about, right? I don't know if I've necessarily come across an organization that has packaged it seemingly as well as you guys have. So talk to me a little bit about the industry. Who are your competitors? How are you standing above them? And then, I used to ask, what does the next 5 to 10 years look like for you and the organization? Yeah. But nowadays, 5 years is going to, like we were talking about with our children, right? 5 years is going to blow by. So let's look at the next 3 years. What's going to happen in the next 3 years?
Wow, boy, wouldn't I love to know that exactly, right? That would be wonderful. But I'll give my best shot. And so here's what I think I know. I'll tell you what our plan is, and it's this. We are attacking, although I talked about B2B, I talked about kind of our B2C, we also have our reseller play, which is, and we actively have about a dozen resellers right now. So those could be individual consultants, those could be firms that are out there that do leadership consulting, whatever it may be, where they use tools like ours to assess different companies, whatever it may be, and they use whether it's DISC, and sometimes they use multiple tools, and our tool may be just one of the tools in the toolkit. And so they sell on our behalf. And so we have, like I said, I think it's 12 that we have out across the United States that are leveraging TalentThrive as we speak and selling on our behalf, and then we share in the profits. And we're continuing to grow that network as well. So we will continue to grow that network along with selling straight to businesses. So we're gonna build that. Now, there's two other plays that we have that are important to us. One is just very near and dear to our heart, which is the military. We have two things that we're doing. One we just started yesterday, which you're super excited about. We're going to have an announcement on LinkedIn about it. The other one we're in the middle of finishing. And I'll just leave it at this because it's a deeper, longer conversation. But all to say, we are engaging with military organizations that help with veterans transitioning out of active military into civilian work life. And so those that are not sure what they're doing, struggling, whatever it may be, and us trying to get a little bit of a snapshot of kind of, okay, what are some of the strengths and where can we help you go? Now, we're doing this at zero cost to the veteran. That is very important to us. We do not want one penny to come out of their pockets. So we're working with these organizations and potentially some government-sponsored funds. We're figuring some of that stuff out, but we've got a number of different angles with some military agencies that we're working with to do that. That is super exciting to us, and it's a passion project for us. Nathan and I are not military veterans ourselves, but we've got a lot, like most people, I'm sure we've got a lot of family that are military folks. My brother was in the Navy. My dad was maybe the member of the 82nd Airborne. So, it's important to us.
I love that.
So that's a really exciting, fun project, and we hope we can help as many veterans as possible. So that's one piece. The other piece that will really be a huge revenue driver for our business is partnering with potentially a much larger HCM company. So whether it's a Paychex or if you're familiar with a Paycor, which Paychex just acquired Paycor. If you think about a relationship like that, where we hitch our wagon to them, or we get integrated into their system, or maybe it's a Paylocity or whatever you name the HCM company, it doesn't really matter. But we get integrated into their system. They then offer our tool in their system, and they have hundreds of salespeople, boots on the ground, offering ours, and it's simply another $2 per employee or whatever it is to have our tool entered into their package. That's where we change the game, because someone like Paychex or Paycor, they've got 55,000 clients. So now you're talking a whole different ball game. So I think that's where we take it from, hey, we're doing pretty good, to holy smokes. So that's going to be one of the game changers, and we're having active conversations with some of those organizations now.
That's incredible. I actually have somebody I need to introduce you to on the military side. So
awesome.
As a reminder, please remind me. Yeah, I think having the connection that I want to make to you guys with this other company that is a nonprofit for vets, I think is going to be phenomenal for that. And I love the heart there. I think there's a lot of need, right, for integrating back. And like you said, me personally, I'm also not a vet, but I know a lot of them. I'm a big supporter of them. And so I think anything we can do to connect, help, and develop is going to be very powerful. So I will get you connected there. And then also, I have another company I want to introduce you to on that resell side, because I think that kind of lends itself actually really nice into my next question is, growth and scale. So the first part of the question is, what are you guys doing? How are you growing? How are you scaling? But on that partnership side, I really would like to dig into partnerships. Personally, I love growing through partnerships. So anywhere that I can see like, hey, there's some opportunity that, you've got a book of clients, I've got a book of clients. It's not going to be a 100% match, but maybe I've got a couple, maybe you've got a couple. We grow and, thrive together. I absolutely love that. So all that to say, marketing, sales, business development, what's working, what's not working, and then let's dive into partnerships.
Yeah, and let's maybe talk a little bit about what is not working, because I'll just say it. I think it's important to talk about failures. I've failed a ton, and I think I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't fallen on my face a boatload. And maybe that's why I look as bad as I do. I don't know, but it's just a reality. But it's also why I'm trying to be humble when I say this, but it's true. It's also why I've been pretty successful. So I think one of the things that we candidly really have struggled with is, and this is early on, I think we've hit a little bit of a nice, we've hit a good flow here recently, but early on, Billy, we struggled with finding a firm or marketing firms that we could really trust to drive leads. I don't know if, I'm sure other companies struggle with this, right? But being able to find companies that truly, when they say, okay, they're gonna, you hear a lot of the same stuff. Oh yeah, we're gonna get you 20 leads a month, and by the week 2, week 3, you're gonna start seeing these leads just fly in, and all that stuff. And ultimately, it's month 2, you're not really seeing much of anything, and by midway through month 3, you're like, oh crap, we're spending $2,500, $3,000, whatever it is a month. And you dump a lot of time on the front end into building the messaging and working with their people so they understand how you want them to sound, when they're having calls and all this stuff. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot of time. And ultimately, if it goes south, then not only is it the money, the money's just, it's money, but it's just money. For me, I can make more money. I am never going to make more time. So to me, that's the killer. I'm never getting that time back. And so that's been something that has been so frustrating for us, and it's happened more than once. And so I don't know if any suggestions you have, or if you've had other folks you've talked to that have experienced that same kind of thing. That has been something that's been very frustrating for us, and we have failed at more than once.
It's going to sound like a shameless plug, and I actually don't intend it, but you did ask. I started SearchLogic because so many agencies. Well, let me restate that just to make it a little bit more clear. It's an unfortunate reality of my industry, specifically in the paid media side of things, but digital advertising as a whole, that the moon is promised, and then there's just a complete letdown. And I joke in this, but it is also somewhat true. Really anybody with a laptop in a garage can start a digital marketing company, right? It doesn't make you good. And I think that the reality is that there's a lot of categories of organizations, and a big part of it does come down to how much are you able to invest into marketing, right? And where can we spend that money to get the greatest return within that stage of the sales funnel, right? And this is not a judgment necessarily, but if you only have $3, $4, $5,000 a month that you can spend on advertising or marketing of some sort, you really need to focus those dollars in, right? You really need to put as much of that power behind as few things as possible to maximize your return. You should not be looking at mid, maybe pushing into mid a little bit, but certainly upper mid to up top of funnel with small budgets, right? That's for organizations that have large budgets. They know that they have the time, as you mentioned, to invest this dollar, and 6 months from now, they're going to start to see the return. So the way that we would approach this with you is, and I say this more as a consultative perspective, we would say, okay, let's identify one or two things that we want to get success in, and let's go really deep into that. Because then the idea being, if we can show or prove success there, whether it's lead volume, more importantly, revenue generation, then we can say, okay, now let's take one step up, then one step up. I think all too often agencies in my industry, they want to push you as fast as possible rather than just incremental growth. The kind of that flywheel piece of it. That's certainly not everybody, but what you are saying is it's not new to me. I hear that quite a bit. And so, you're 100% right. I think with that being said, just in conversation, I have a few ideas we can talk about offline, but I think that narrowing in on a few things that really get in front of your audience, I think could be some really good ways to do it. So let's chat about that. But yeah, absolutely, narrowing in, I think is going to be really important for you. Let's not go after this entire thing.
Yeah, good. And then I think in terms, so that's certainly a failure. And I think one of the things with this military piece that I mentioned, that is going to be, we're early on in it, but I'm already seeing some of the connections and some of how this is kind of broadening a network of people that are latching on to the excitement of this and the support of this. That honestly, and I've always been a big believer in this, Billy, that Nathan and I are doing this, again, we do not want a penny from any of these veterans for this. This is strictly a passion of ours, but what's going to end up happening is there are going to be some companies and some organizations that are going to be very supportive and all that, and things are going to come back to us because of that. That's wonderful, but that's not the intention of this, but that's what's going to end up happening from this, and that's great. But that was not the intention of this. But I think that will happen. And I'm just a believer in that in general. The more you give and put out there in life, I think a lot of that comes back to you. And I think in this case, it's no different. So I think we're already seeing that. Now, that's not necessarily, that wasn't the strategy with this, right? It's just what is happening. But so that's one thing. But the other partnerships, I think, for us that I mentioned with, whether it's the Paycors or the Paylocities, that path, that is going to be, whether it's that exact road we go down with the HC, the Human Capital Management, larger organizations, or if it's one that's a little smaller but experiencing great growth. We just had a meeting with the old CEO of Monster, and which was kind of an interesting timing given just the announcement the other day. And so there's some things that we're talking about potentially doing. He's got a new organization that he's working on, and so there's some very interesting things that could come out of that. And so there's just a lot of those types of conversations that we're having with companies that want to attach a tool like ours to their toolkit. And Nathan and I are just big believers in the more conversations you have, keep talking to people that are doing these kinds of things, these kinds of ventures, and want to, number one, they understand your product, they see the value, and they understand the value that it can bring to their clients. And if they get your story and they get the value, and then there's a potential match there. And once you start going down that path, it can be dangerous in a good way. And I think we're having so many of those conversations. There's going to be a number of them that are going to hit, and so it's a matter of time. Now, I'm not. Never been known, and you can ask my wife Stephanie this, I have never been known as the patient man, so I want those to hit sooner than later, but
Sure.
and that kind of gets to your comment of, hey, where do you see the next 3 years, right? That was kind of the original question, and I think this is for us, I think if we could look at the crystal ball and say 5 to 7 years from now, we would love one of those bigger organizations to say, gosh, you guys really have positioned yourself really well. It's time to just buy you. And then Nathan and I can, ride off into the sunset.
Hey man, I'm all about that. I think that's a great goal, and I think you're well on the way to position yourself there. And honestly, I think this is a really good way, or a good spot to transition to our final portion of the podcast. But I wanted to say a couple things. One, your view and approach on giving before you get is phenomenal. That's a belief I've had for a long time. In fact, I like to say, give without expectation of getting, and you will get. It's a phenomenon that doesn't make sense, but I think it's valuable. And the funny part is, it's actually a little bit of what I wanted to chat with you later, based upon the conversation we just had. Was sometimes marketing in a space like yours, giving before you get is a really good way to get the ball going, and that could be content, it could be training, it could be there's a lot of different options, but it's a great way to build trust in an audience and a community that know, like, and trust you. So and then finally, the partnership view and how you work together, I think is incredible. So I love it, and honestly, this is a really good conversation, Steve. I appreciate it. Kind of lighten the mood a little bit, jump into a lightning round. I'm going to ask you a few questions. I didn't tell you or prep you for this, so really easy questions. Just say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Every time someone says really easy questions, then I'm like, oh, this is going to be bad.
Well, the first question's really easy. It gets a little better down the road. So, all right. So first of all, coffee or tea?
Say it again.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
All righty. Same here. What's one tool or system that you rely on to keep your organization running smoothly?
Well, I mean, I use Salesforce a lot. It's
good.
Yeah,
I love it.
It's the first thing that comes to mind in terms of just keeping my day to day. Now, I say that, and that's an easy answer, but you're talking about systems, so I'll stay with that answer. But Mary, who is my Swiss Army knife, as I lovingly refer to her as, she's really she's the one thing that keeps me all together.
I know exactly what you mean, and we all need one of those for sure. All right, favorite book, podcast, or resource that's influenced you the most?
Oh, wow. Think and Grow Rich. I think that was one. It's been years since I read it, but I think just when you say influenced me, it was that time in my life when I read it. My mindset was very different. I had such a fear-based mentality around money, and just reading that really changed the way I thought about how I approach even just conversations about money, how I approach business and conversations around, going for no's, going for yeses in business. It totally changed. It flipped a switch for me.
That's
Yeah.
good. I love it. Yep. It's a great one. I've read it several times. What's one bucket list item you've already checked off?
Going to Australia, and I was fortunate to do it twice actually.
Wow, very cool. I would love to go there. What's one goal you're still working on?
I would love to be able to play a concert for over 1,000 people.
Nice. That would be phenomenal. I hope that happens. All right. Last lightning round question. You can spend a little bit more time on this one if you need to, but what's one of the bigger challenges you faced in your career, and how has it shaped who you are and how you approach business?
I think for me, I struggled for a long time taking some emotion out of sales calls and emotion out of business discussions. I've gotten much, and I would say if you ask a lot of people that either work with me or have done business with me in the past, number one, they might be shocked to hear me say this, that I'm saying this.
Yep.
And they'd probably be looking at me sideways right now, but it really affected like my ability to have good business conversations, and so I would either have to disengage from the conversation before I got too emotional, and so I didn't get to a result that I wanted because I couldn't even have the real conversation I wanted to, or I would get emotional and then I didn't get what I wanted anyway. So I worked on that for a long time, and so now I'm almost, maybe, if I'm being honest, maybe too much the other way. And that's why I say, a lot of people that work with me, they're like, man, you are just kind of hitting people over the head. You don't really care. I'm like, well, no, I do. do. It's just, I kind of have to keep this wall up sometimes, because I feel like if I don't, then maybe some of the old sappy Steve comes out, and I don't know if I want to go there. So
that's good stuff,
I think
man.
that's a challenge that I had to overcome to be able to be better at having tough conversations, and really being better at being a leader, because people are going to take advantage if you can't have tough conversation. That doesn't mean you have to be mean. It doesn't mean you have to say horrible things or treat people poorly. You just have to be able to be okay with saying no, or setting good boundaries. And I just struggled with that early on in leadership, and I've gotten much better at that, but also doing it in a very respectful and good way, to where people are still like, okay, yeah, I understand why he did that, and he wasn't a butthead about it. He was just, I get why he had to do it. So I think that's probably the thing I've had to work on the most.
I love it. Finally, Steve, if our listeners want to connect with you, what's one of the best ways to do that?
I've got cell phone and email. Cell phone, 513-602-1210. Email, steve@talent-thrive.com. TalentThrive.com.
Wonderful. This has been great, Steve. I appreciate your time. For everybody else, this is a wrap of this episode of Scaling Smart. I'm your host, Billy Mitchell, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Scaling Smart podcast, where we have conversations with real people who have real stories, who have learned how to scale smart.